Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Find Your Model Health, the official podcast for those looking to optimize their long-term health and weight goals and understand how their body really works. I'm very happy to have you all back with me for another piece of your day. And today I have the most amazing guest on to speak to us. But before we go on, I must remind you that the information in these podcast episodes is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. Please consult your health practitioner before making any lifestyle changes. So today we're going to get into iodine, which is a somewhat controversial topic, but also confusing at the same time, I think, for many people. So our guest today is going to kind of help to clarify some of that confusion and lift the mist, per se, around iodine. For the last few years, I've really been trying personally to try and understand iodine, not just for myself, but also for my clients and my followers. And not only its importance for health, but also if there's any negatives that we should be aware of as well. And on my search for information, I came across this fabulous speaker called Lynne Farrow. And I was really intrigued on what she had to say. And she was a breath of fresh air when I listened to some of her interviews. I read her book, and just went through her website, and I was like, wow, there actually is someone out there that knows a lot about this. So today I'm really hoping that we can help to open many people's eyes to iodine and to help us understand its importance. So today, help me welcome Lynne Farrow. She is director of Breast Cancer Choices, Inc., which is a nonprofit organization, and she is the author of Iodine Crisis book, What You Don't Know About Iodine Can Wreck Your Life. She's an advocate for iodine, and she teaches medical and health practitioners and even the general public. Lynne is editor for iodineresearch.com, which I regularly refer to, and she is the director of Breast Cancer Choice. So Lynne, welcome. Thank you so much for spending some of your day with me. I'm excited to get into this. And like I mentioned, there's a huge misconception around iodine. I think people, we had a little conversation before we started recording. People are aware of it, but they're maybe apprehensive of it. They're not quite sure how to use iodine, what's safe dosage, and also hopefully we can get through all of that. So can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what introduced you to iodine and what led you down this path?
Well, while I was researching breast cancer, after I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was looking at different options. And a doctor I ran into at a medical conference said to me, "Have you looked into iodine?" And I thought, oh gosh, I've looked into absolutely everything. If iodine had any benefit to breast cancer, I would have heard about it by now. Well, turns out I was flamingly wrong about that. It was one of those old, iodine used to be, very well used in all medical practices until it was sort of tromped out of the business years ago. But not that many years ago, like in 1960. So anyway, I decided I would research iodine because this doctor suggested I should. And I thought, well, I'm used to doing medical research. I'll spend 2 weeks if there's even that much out there. Mm-hmm. And after 2 weeks, I thought, oh gosh, I'm only scratching the surface. I think I'm going to need 2 months. Well, the 2 months came and went, and I still had lots more to do. I wound up getting old medical books, on the internet and used from eBay and stuff like that. And I sort of discovered that there was a whole history of how iodine had been used. And I went back for 3,000 years to the Egyptians. And then I went back and I looked at the archaeology sites, and it turns out the seaweed was used as a medicine 30,000 years ago. Whoa. Anyway, so with that amount of information, I just took off with that, and I contacted Dr. Brownstein and Dr. Abraham and Dr. Fleshes that had started this very small project of 3 doctors that were interested in trying to expose how iodine had been maligned by a certain group of people in the government here in the States. And he sort of deconstructed all the prejudices against iodine, and Dr. Abraham and the other 2 doctors were sort of co-workers with him. So I got to meet them, read all their material, which is extensive and medical, and I was convinced that there needed to be a book for the average person. And I tried to write, when I first told people I was writing a book for the average person on iodine, everybody just yawned and said, well, they would say they took iodized salt.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, I'm going to really have trouble writing a book about this. So I knew I had to write the absolute most engaging book, and the book that would convince people with evidence and pictures and adding on many case studies of people that had problems and had taken iodine and reversed their problems, or had so much benefit that they felt they were helped by it. So that's how I got to write the book, and phenomenally, it just sort of took off. I thought, well, even if 1,000 people buy this book, or 5,000 people, at least all the information about iodine is on the record: how it works, why it works, how it's been used for centuries. And so at least it's on the record, and I could go on and write my next book. Well, it took off. It's been translated into 7 languages, including Arabic and Chinese and Polish and French. So I'm very, very happy with that. And I hear from people every day about what's happened in their life, what changed. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah, that is quite an accomplishment and something to be proud of. And even, as I say, as health professionals, even just helping one person change their lives, it's worth it at that stage, even though you're influencing many, many lives. But if we can just change one person, and then maybe they tell the next and the next and the next. So, and it is an awesome, straight to the point book. I do think it's really easily digestible for most people to understand. And you mentioned, like, you have to have a lot of people want to see the research to back it up. Otherwise, they're going to kind of question your word, and your book contains all of it and more. So, like you mentioned, iodine has been used in traditional medicine for a long time. Just as a side note, in your research, can you point out any area or 2 where iodine has been used in ancient times?
Well, one of the most interesting is the Egyptians used iodine as seaweed, different seaweeds, and it was even in those hieroglyphic scrolls that they have. The Ebers papyrus was translated into English just in the last 20 years, and that's a papyrus that said, if you have breast cancer, wrap your breasts in seaweed. So that's 3,000 years. So that's phenomenal to have that and document that in the book.
Yeah.
But we tend to think in terms of the West, but there's just Indian traditions and other traditions that also find a way of using seaweed, or iodine as seaweed.
Yeah. You had, and you mentioned breast cancer again there, you've had your own experience with breast cancer, which I'm sorry to hear about, but our mess really does become our message, and you wouldn't have been led down this road had that not happened. But when you were doing your research, what did you recognize in regards to breast cancer and iodine, especially around the times where iodine was reduced in our environment and maybe bromine was increased there?
Yes, one of the things that I found was I contacted the National Institutes of Health. They have a statistical bureau that just does their statistics, and I contacted the head of that, and I knew how to go through the figures on their website, because I had been invited down there with some other activists to learn how to use statistics that the government, we pay taxes for here.
Yeah.
So one of the things I found, I called them and I said, I need to know if I'm doing the math right in from your charts. And I said, I think, tell me if I've gotten this right. Did thyroid cancer go up 80%? I seem to, that was what I was deriving from my own math. And he said, no, you have to multiply it times 100 after the 80%. Thyroid cancer has gone up 180% since the 1970s. And Dr. K should know this kind of thing. And he said to me, this is the PhD that runs the place. The SEER is the name of the statistical division. Yeah. He said, we didn't even notice that, which I thought was funny. That a civilian who just wandered in after just learning how to read studies and charts for years. Okay. And I pointed out, and he was floored. And he wanted to know, what do you think happened? Is there any explanation? I mean, if it goes up 5 or 10%, they don't really pay attention. But if it goes up 180%, that's for men and women. So, and one of the things that has happened is that during the time between 1970 and 2000, there's a way that the government measures the nutrients we're getting. They just, every 10 years, they measure. And they found that in measuring urine in that time period, starting in 1970, the urinary iodine went down 50%. Now that's a huge amount for an essential nutrient to go down in the urine. So that tells you that people are consuming. If half is coming out in the urine, they're consuming half as much. Well, what happened in 1970 that started the statistical roll? And what happened was, one of the main things that happened was that iodine was taken out of bread and wheat. And like when my father grew up, he had bread for breakfast, he'd have it for lunch. So he would get at least a milligram of iodine just every day minimum. And so that was before 1970. Yeah. But then, okay, so that's bad enough that just your intake, your normal intake that you would expect to get had diminished. But then bromine, which is a chemical that's used as a fertilizer, a fire retardant, a fumigant, like they fumigate strawberries when they take them out of the ground. They pre-plant the bromide in the soil, and then when the strawberries are picked, they spray them again. So the bromide, the reason bromide is a problem is that it competes with iodine in the cells. And in the periodic table, you see bromide and iodine, or bromine and iodine, they compete with each other. So if you one, have less iodine in your food, and two, have bromide chasing what little iodine you have left out of your body, competing with it. This is the theory of the problem. And one of the things that has been known for, this is the other things, is that iodine has been used as a breast treatment, which I didn't realize. And now there's even a pharmaceutical product that's called Violet that's used for people that have breast pain. Yeah. So that's sort of routinely known, but there's not a whole lot of it. I mean, I know it because I'm in the business, and they've lifted stuff from my book to use in their advertising copy. But so to answer your question, that's how my book is called The Iodine Crisis, not because I'm exaggerating or trying to sell books, but this is a public health crisis. Yeah. And if you don't know about it, like I didn't know about it, you could probably leave yourself open to certain diseases, like especially thyroid and breast disease.
Which are probably the most prominent issues that many women are dealing with.
Yes.
And so as the iodine went down, the bromine went up, along with other environmental exposure of other toxins that can potentially have the displacement of iodine as well.
Yes.
So in your book, you discuss how having a low, and I know you've told this story before, but it is quite amusing because as women, sometimes we get so caught up just trying to survive the day that we don't notice silly things like wearing our slippers out of the house or whatever. And you had given an antidote about you had left the house with a coat hanger still in your jacket. And it really kind of was emphasizing how having that iodine deficiency was actually impairing your daily functions, even to just think straight.
Well, brain fog is another thing that seems to be associated with iodine deficiency. Not all brain fog, but I had been teaching at a college, and I was so tired. And I also, I would be looking into space, and the students would be wondering what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So I had to leave. I worked as a journalist because I could set my own hours, but it was really getting hard just to drag myself there. And for several years, I took Darvocet, which is a pretty powerful painkiller. It's not a narcotic, but
Yeah.
I've been taking it every day, 3 times a day, because I had headaches. I just started having them, and then it was like once a week, and then it was every single day. And so I had 3 things that, the brain fog, the fatigue, and the headaches. The headaches were the most annoying, obviously, and inconveniencing. So I decided, I was living in New York at the time, and I lived near the subway, and I made an appointment with a very well-known doctor, an integrative health doctor, and I thought, I'm sure this guy can help me. But the thing is, when you have brain fog, you're always like remembering to do certain things. You have your keys, you have this, you lock your door, you go back and you check. And so the day I went to see this doctor, I primped, I put lipstick on, I looked in the mirror. I looked in a full-length mirror before I left, go out, past the doorman, up the street, down the whole of West 72nd Street. Nobody says anything to me. And then I go down in the subway, and I see like I have my fuzzy slippers on. I don't know, I'm in like a nice outfit, a nice jacket. I had tried to look nice. Yeah. And so I had to turn around, go back past the doorman who says nothing, go back in and put regular shoes on, and go back. It said I got to the doctor's office. Now that I trekked down through the subway and back into Midtown Manhattan again, I got to the doctor's office, and I went to the women's room, probably put makeup on or lipstick or something. Yeah. And I walk out into the waiting room, and there's this elderly, he must have been in his 80s. He said, "Miss, you have a hanger in your jacket." And I'm thinking, oh God, there's a dry cleaning tag I have on. How embarrassing. Well, it wasn't a dry cleaning tag. It was a big wooden hanger. And somehow I'd put my jacket on and trekked through New York City with this wooden hanger.
And you didn't even feel it.
No, I was concentrating on, other things, I guess.
Yeah.
It's and just so I was just going to say that I mentioned this in the book. I said, well, the doctor's going to say, well, what do you mean by brain fog? And I said, I have an answer. Here's my hanger.
Yeah, look at this. It just kind of is testament to how discombobulated we can get. And that's the best word, I think, for me to use, is that not only have you the brain fog, but everything's almost a tizzy at that stage. You think you're doing everything right, and oh my God, I look great, and I'm ready for my appointment. And oh, okay. Yeah.
I'd also, on the way, if you have brain fog, you always start out very early because you may get lost.
Yeah.
I stopped to have lunch at a little diner on the way to the doctor's office, and I didn't have any money. So the poor waitress said to me, "Oh, you come back and pay us when you can." You can imagine this in the middle of New York City.
Well, she probably thought you were homeless or something with a coat hanger. She felt bad for you.
Yeah, I could see that she saw how flustered I was. So anyway, she felt sorry for me.
Yeah, well, at least there's a silver lining. You got a free lunch out of it.
Yeah, well, I had to go back. I went back and paid her, but of course, because she was so kind. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. I mean, that was just an average day.
For some people, that is their average day. I mean, like the other day, I was looking for my keys, and I was like, "Where are my keys? Where are my keys?" And they were in my hand. But I can't blame the iodine because I've been using iodine for ages. So I just blame that on being a mom. But it happens to so many people, a lot worse than that. Like people leaving their house with their doors left open and just crazy stuff.
Is leaving the car running.
Yeah.
That's something people have told me, that their brain fog is a problem.
Or those, shall we say, horrific stories of people, new moms forgetting their babies in stores as well.
Yes. I'm sure, they blame the moms, but you have so much on your mind and you're so tired.
And you're iodine deficient as well.
Yes, that's right, especially after having a baby. Because a baby takes the lion's share of your iodine.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that, but I want to then know, so then once you came across the iodine information and then you said, okay, I'm going to try this myself. What then happened? How did your experience change? Like, you obviously stopped bringing coat hangers out with you, but what else happened?
Yes. Well, a lot of things. Well, I was taking it mainly because of the breast cancer. That was my concern. Though I had hypothyroid diagnosis on and off over the years, but the thyroid medicine never helped at all. It never, it might maybe a little speedy for the first day, but it never really worked. But what did work, the first day I took the pill, I took 50 milligrams, which is like, this is not after not taking any iodine for a long time. And within an hour and a half, I was taking the iodine loading test, which is the test you take to measure the amount of iodine in your urine. And you take it over 24 hours. So I got up in the morning, took 50 milligrams, just expecting it to be an ordinary day. And an hour and a half, I got what other people have had this too, not everyone, with the boing effect, which your brain wakes up. Now, I don't know whether it woke up from brain fog or it woke up from thyroid. I really don't know. I just know that I instantly felt clear and better. And I could do math like crazy, better than the people in the store, when they're adding 33 and 43 or something like that. I was able to come up with the answer. I was surprised because I hadn't come up with an answer for anything in so many years. I just wait for somebody smarter to figure it out.
Yeah.
So the main thing was the burst of mental clarity. And I noticed after, I guess it must have been a few days or a month, that I wasn't taking any Darvocet, that I wasn't getting this daily headache 3 times a day. And that was that made me feel that, there's really something to this.
Yeah.
I had spent thousands of the family's money, thousands of dollars going to doctors, trying to figure the headache thing out, and clinics in Chicago and other places.
Yeah.
And they never figured it out.
So the brain started working again, like that neuro connection started to fire back up. Maybe it had been dormant, and then the iodine came in like a light switch and said, let's go, wake up, everyone.
Well, originally I thought, hey, gee, maybe this is my thyroid. Can iodine wake up the thyroid that fast?
Yeah.
And then, I lived with this for a few years, and then I read a lot on the iodine in the brain, because iodine deficiency is the leading cause of mental retardation in the world, according to every public health organization. And the more I read about that, and these are other stories that aren't, widely publicized, on how there's certain places in the world where the iodine deficiency is so bad that people are very small and they have this sort of stubby legs. And once they're given iodine, I'll send you a video on this. Once they're given iodine, the children of the small people grow up normally, and the miscarriages go way down. The miscarriage rate with both animals and people, just it's able, the fetus is able to stay in the uterus. It doesn't fall out like it does when there's an iodine deficiency.
Yeah. So that's giving them iodine during pregnancy and post-pregnancy to help.
Yeah, well, they just when I think it's the Kennedy Foundation is one of the companies, one of the organizations that does this, but there's others too. They go in and I think it costs something like 8 cents per person per year to put a potassium iodate in their irrigation system. And it's very low tech, but it really it's a huge advantage of it, even financially, because the animals they raise don't die or they don't miscarry.
Yeah, yeah, so healthier animals too. So you mentioned that you started then taking 50 milligrams, which is quite a high dose.
Yes.
Would probably cause some practitioners to have stroke if they heard you say that, because the general recommended daily allowance is 100, or it's 150 micrograms, but for some practitioners, that's even not just the recommended daily allowance, that's the maximum they will go, which is not a lot at all compared to what you generally recommend in your book.
Well, the thing is, I started with 50 milligrams. That's only because that was the dosage you took with a test. After a while, a week or so, that was too much for me. And the thing is, because back then we didn't know to do salt loading using salt water to pull out the bromide that's displaced by taking the iodine.
Yeah.
So in my book, I that's that's the upper range. If you don't get results, it's like 15. You can go up as high as that. And I feel, and the doctors feel safely. That's why they picked 50 milligrams as the dose. But on the iodine workshop group, they'll tell you. I mean, one of the biggest things that this is a Facebook group for your followers that may not know it. The iodine workshop group, they've been doing this for, I don't know, 10 years or more. And people will write in and say, look, I couldn't take any more than 10 milligrams, but the breast pain has gone down. This has gone down. I think somebody posted yesterday that she had periods that were very painful and heavy. And she got results, and she says, exactly what she did to get that. But people that are trying to work out or they're trying to be functioning, can't have heavy periods all the time. So this was like a life-changing effect for her. And with me being warm after my entire life being cold all the time and making everybody else in the house turn up the heat, or I was sort of a pain in the neck. But if iodine did only one thing and made me warm, it was worth taking it, because I was obviously hypothyroid, but nobody was paying attention to that.
Did you see, because increasing your core temperature would obviously indicate then an increase in your metabolism. Did you see an improvement in any of your other thyroid symptoms, like your skin and stuff?
Yes, both I and my sister found out that I was always putting hand lotion on and slathering myself. But after a while, taking the iodine, I couldn't understand why people used hand lotion, because my hands just got, I guess, normal.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's normal or not, but for me to not feel that flakiness, even when my sister started taking it, her daughters, she has 3 daughters, said, Mom, your skin isn't flaky anymore. It's not dry. You eat the skin on her arm even, which looked like rice paper practically, because it was so dry.
Yeah.
It just got better.
And you think that's not only the influence of the thyroid hormones, but also optimizing the other pathways as well?
I don't know. To tell the truth, I really don't know. I just know that when people take iodine, the dry skin, and they say hypothyroidism is like your metabolism gets low and more efficient, like a snake is a cold-blooded body, cold-blooded animal, and it has that same papery skin, and so as the animals get more progressed up the food chain, they're more likely to have more moist skins.
Yeah. I would wonder as well, because thyroid hormone has a huge influence on cholesterol, and cholesterol, of course, being a fatty acid, is needed for membranes, including skin membranes. So there could be like some driving factor there as well.
Yeah, most likely it is. I remember in before they had thyroid hormone tests, the marker for cholesterol, marker for hypothyroidism was high cholesterol.
Yeah.
And so they, if somebody had that, they'd say, oh, let's look at his thyroid.
Yeah, and when most people think of cholesterol, they're immediately thinking cardiovascular health, but all of your cells are made up of cholesterol, including your skin and your hair follicles and all. So if that slows down, those kind of externals are going to suffer.
That's a good point. Yes.
Oh, see, you learned something from me
I
too.
did. I learned something from you. Great.
So, well, in your book, you recommend starting at a base level of 12.5 milligrams. And that's in the tablet form, though, just to clarify, because I personally use the Lugol's and I feel like awesome when I use Lugol's. A lot of my clients will use Lugol's. And I'd mentioned to you that we're here in Canada. For us to get our hands on the Loradol here in Canada is quite expensive as well, definitely compared to Lugol's. So if someone was using Lugol's, what kind of dosage would they be looking at?
Well, there should be a chart. There's a chart in the book that has how much iodine is in the 2% Lugol's or the 5% or even higher. And you just look at that and you'll learn, like, if you take 2 drops, how many milligrams that is. So I think it's easier to adjust the Lugol's actually more than it is, to craft open those tablets or to swallow the lower milligram ones.
I really like the Lugol's because of the topical application that can be done. So without doubt, I'm always walking around with quote bruises on my arms, and people will stop me in the gym and they'll say, "Is that iodine on your arms?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it is."
Oh, really?
But that's my preferred way, is to draw on the inside of both of my forearms where the skin is thinner. I will put some Lugol's on both arms, and I do a lot of tracking of my own numbers. And with my Whoop, what I noticed was I'd been using Lugol's for quite some time and I felt good, and my hypothyroidism, I don't have a problem per se with it. Like, I'll get colds sometimes or whatever if I undereat or something. But then once I increased the amount of iodine I was using, I noticed my metabolic expenditure on my Whoop, it increased by 500 calories. And I was like, well, hold on a second now. Could it be making that much of an influence on my metabolism? And my hair is growing great. Like, I did personally notice a difference increasing the amount that I was putting on.
It can, if that's your area of deficiency, it can do that. It's very hard to tell. Sometimes people, their hair will start growing differently, or it'll get curly. Some people's hair gets curlier anyway.
Yeah.
It's very hard to know if you've lived your whole life with straight hair, and after a few months you see, gee, I didn't used to have that cowlick there. And you find out your hair is just getting a little curlier.
Yeah. Well, I have Irish hair, so my hair is just crazy at the best of times. But I've definitely always had my cowlick, and I don't want it going away, so I'll be using iodine for a while. So with the dosing, is that the same for pregnancy and for breastfeeding and for children, or should we be looking at lowering the dose for them?
People have used that and more, upwards of 50, but the recommendation is, Dr. Fleshes has figured out, he's one of the 3 iodine doctors, what he thought was acceptable and could be defended in court, for example, so the doctor doesn't have to feel bad. It's no more than 25 milligrams. Or you could even go less than that, but that's for pregnant or nursing women.
And there is some bowel tolerance as well, though, right? That can kind of indicate to you, maybe you've taken too much.
Unless the iodine is killing off parasites or bacteria, it shouldn't be bothering your bowel.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because a lot of people, I can only speak for Canada, but because so much camping goes on in Canada, there's a lot of parasite exposure here.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing with the Lugol's, which is another reason why I like Lugol's so much, is because we have the two different forms of iodine in there. We've got the elemental and the potassium iodide. And I if I can get elemental, any sort of minerals, I'll always go for that first, which partially why I really like mineral water, because it's elemental as well. But can you speak a little bit on why having the two options of iodine is important? Because they influence different parts of the body.
Okay, I want to answer. I want to change what I said just before this about pregnancy and nursing. I would probably suggest 12.5 milligrams to be absolutely careful, even though people use much more than that. I mean, I think that's what that's probably the safest way. Not that it's not safe, but to protect yourself, and the baby will absolutely suck that right up, because it will when you're pregnant or nursing, the body changes its iodine absorption capacity, and it goes directly to the baby. I mean, the mother will get some, but the baby will get the lion's share, as they say.
That would make you think then that you might need a little bit more, so that both parties are getting a sufficient amount.
Yes, you would think. Well, some people don't pay attention to that. And my niece took much more. She had 3 children, and the first one didn't have any iodine, and then the second 2 did, and she found that after the second one, she really felt she needed more, and took more with the third.
Yeah.
And they're they're real smart kids.
Yeah. She noticed a difference between like the pregnancies, like maybe one child catches on faster than the other child, kind of thing.
Well, that has happened. That's a problem with the iodine child. Doesn't have to really be taught anything. I mean, on the iodine workshop group, they have people writing in about it's hashtag iodine babies, and people will send the pictures of their babies like doing algebra or something, or just things that are playing chess, teaching the other kids chess, and like 3 years old or something. So it really is a startling thing to see a baby that's been exposed to iodine.
Yeah, maybe I need to up my dose, because I am not good at chess, so I think that's the reason. But back to the different forms of iodine, how do they influence our body?
Well, there's one form has an affinity for certain places in the body, and the other form has an affinity for others. For example, iodine, or the potassium iodine, has a more of an affinity for the breast. That's the elemental iodine. The thyroid is much less fussy and will take iodine, and sometimes it changes back and forth within the body. I saw a long talk by Dr. Abraham on this. It will go back and forth, but over the years, I mean, there were conventions in England, these huge, in Crystal Palace, and all these demonstrated, all these medical products would come to be shown. And one, I think I wrote about this in the book, there was 80 different forms of iodine. But sodium, silver iodine, all different kinds. But just by trial and error, the doctors have found that Lugol's is the most reliable. And Dr. Lugol's, has published, he's French, he published this stuff in French, and I've tried to read it. You can even read it in French, because most of the words are medical, so you don't have to, all you just need is a few verbs to read what he was saying about the lungs in particular, because the time he was alive, respiratory diseases were just like 50% of the people in the UK had various forms of respiratory diseases, and he would give them Lugol's, and it would just kill it off. Yeah,
because the antibacterial aspects.
Yes, and they inhaled it. There's all sorts of things. Even the British Navy had. I have these in my collection. It's like you wear a chain around your neck, and it's a locket, and you put Lugol's on it, and then it wafts up. So they would send school children to school with these lockets, so they could just evaporate. The evaporating iodine would just go into their lungs all day long.
So not like a nebulizer, but like a locket that maybe had some fabric dosed in Lugol's, and they
Yeah.
would just open it and inhale it?
Yes, it was
Oh,
like, it kind of felt like, you know the fabric felt.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. It was something like that that would be absorbent, and so during the day they would just inhale it.
That is fascinating and still a useful tool for our
Yes.
current environment. So that's why as well that potassium iodide is generally recommended if women have cysts in their breasts or sore breasts around PMS, that you can smear some on or apply some topically, and it can really help a lot with that pain there.
Yes, I mean, even after the hurricane in the U.S., Katrina, the people that were taking iodine were displaced from their houses, some of them, and they were going around together, and they went into, and the breast, started hurting. So they went into a drugstore and just got like the iodine for cuts and bruises, and even that helped the breast.
Yeah. And with the whole notion of the cysts, is that just going to be breasts, or have we seen it help in other areas like around the uterus and stuff?
Yes, it has not as spontaneously miraculous as the breast, but I even had a cyst on my waist, and which I wasn't paying any attention to as a dermoid cyst or something like that, and I just noticed it was gone because I wasn't expecting it to affect that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And
So
I didn't apply iodine to it, which some people, if they have different cysts and irregularities, do it. It's just
yeah,
the iodine I was taking by mouth got into my body and got to the cyst.
yeah. I have a tiny cyst under my skin here. So when I'm painting my iodine on, I'll always put some extra over it. And I definitely feel there has been a reduction, but I think I might try increase the dose and see if it kind of speeds up. But where I'm pointing here, and you could probably still see the yellow mark from this morning's iodine. But I might increase the dose because I had put, just to show you, see the iodine there?
Yes.
So I have it on both. But so I put that on this morning at about 7 a.m. and now we're coming up to 2 p.m. and it's almost completely gone, which tells me that my body is sucking it in and I potentially need more. And we're having a heat wave here as well. So I've been sweating a lot too. So my body probably is needing a bit more. And that is quite a lot considering I only put it on a few hours ago.
Yes, your skin, one of the things that we don't understand yet is sometimes your skin might need more than, say, your ovaries, or something else, or your eyes. And there's a whole thing about iodine in the eyes and the ears, going back years and years. So we never know exactly where I mean, we can tell by X-ray where, because you give somebody intravenous iodine, like women, for example, and then take radiation pictures, X-ray type pictures that measure the radiated iodine, and you can see that it immediately goes to the stomach, the mouth, the breast, and the uterus and the ovaries. So you can actually.
So kind of like a triage effect.
Yes.
Oh.
But occasionally it will surprise us and we'll go to the skin. Some people may need more in the skin, maybe ethnicity, we don't know.
Yeah, it could be like different constitutions. Like, I speak to my clients that we'll always have weaker aspects in our body as individuals. And I've had always issues, and you'll find this interesting, I think, because you just mentioned the eyes there. I've always had poor circulation, and upon reflection now, I'm obviously I can connect it to the slower thyroid. And then because my circulation is slower, my detoxification pathways were slower. And I'm a certified iridologist, so I look at the irises a lot, and I have blue eyes, you can't see, but they used to be tinged with orange and brown right in the iris. And I knew, like, my body is toxic. I need to sort this out. I used to be 280 pounds. So that also was playing a factor on the slower thyroid and circulation too. And over the last couple of months, the orange and the brown completely gone from my irises, like completely gone. And I do think the iodine helped with that because it's speeding up everything, my detoxification, my circulation, and helping my body flush basically. And anytime in Alberta here, we've had wildfires. So we get a lot of smoke in the air, like a lot. And even then I kind of intuitively know to increase my iodine to kind of displace any of the chemicals coming in, but I'll always get rashes on the top of my eyelids. So my skin is, I think, because my circulation is slower, my skin's trying to compensate and detox through my skin. So I get these rashes.
So it will even put a rash on your eyelid. Are you saying that it might be excreting toxins through your eyelids?
Yeah, I think my body is trying to use my skin to get out, trying to push the toxins out. And for me, it comes out in my skin. For other people, they might have mucus or they might get urinary tract infections or something. But for me, it's my skin. So it was always almost intuitive for me to start spreading the Lugol's on my skin.
Ah, that's
Yeah,
good
but
that you connected the dots.
yeah, but my iris is completely cleared up because when you do our iridology training, you understand that when you see these different colors in the iris, it can show different aspects of toxicity in the body. And I have very fair blue eyes, and now they're completely clear. There's no orange or brown in them at all.
It's too
So
bad you don't. Do you have a picture of your before and after eyes?
I might be able to have one and email it on to you. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be fascinating.
Because as I say to my clients all the time, like we're obviously trying to teach people about iodine now and all these different things or tools that can potentially help us, but the body is one system and everything connects. And if you look closely, your body's going to tell you like this is wrong or keep doing this or something.
Yes, well, you made the connection. Well, you're in the business, so and you're aware of this kind of information, but somebody else might not even have noticed, like for another 5 years, that their
Yeah,
eye, the color changed.
yeah. And it's all about connecting the dots.
Yes.
So I've just got a few more questions before we wrap up. Of course, I'm watching the time, but how does taking iodine influence someone? Because I did a thyroid masterclass last night, and I know this is going to come up when people listen to this. If someone has got a hypothyroidism diagnosis and they're taking some sort of hormone treatment, some sort of synthroid or something, can they still use iodine, or is that going to be a problem?
No, that's fine. First of all, they have to know to take selenium and preferably the other companion nutrients, but
Yeah.
absolutely selenium. But they may find in a few months that they're feeling a little speedy, and so they just withdraw, or even if they don't, trial and error.
Yeah.
Don't take it one day and then see how you feel, and then don't take it 2 days and see how you feel, that kind of thing. I mean, don't take it. I mean, if you want to wean yourself off the synthroid or whatever you're taking.
So if you are taking too much, what might you experience? Some sort of speeding up, like you mentioned, some anxiety, some increased heart rate, something like that?
The only thing I understand after all these years, if you're not taking thyroid medicine, for example, if you're not taking synthroid or one of the natural products, and you take iodine and you feel speedy, bromide will get detoxed, and by diagnosis, bromide as a poison. And so an alarm gets up. It's like an adrenaline response is elicited by the bromide getting into the bloodstream. Now, if you use the salt water, that should pull the bromide out of the bloodstream that it's been forced into by the iodine. The iodine is just trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
That can cause a speediness. And then the thing to do is, other than the salt water, is just cut back and start lower, because you don't want to have the adrenaline response. The only other thing that can be is if you're taking too much thyroid medicine. Now that because if a normal person takes thyroid medicine, they usually feel a little speedy. or they may feel a little speedy. They may be speedy and not even notice it, or the doctor may notice that you don't need to take it anymore, that kind of thing. Now, what Dr. Brownstein does with his patients, if they come in off the street and they're not taking any thyroid medicine and they're hypothyroid, he doesn't put them on hypothyroid medicine. He starts with them with iodine in hopes that he can get them up without any medication. And for the patients that are already come to him and they're already taking thyroid hormones, he's found that a third of them can get off the medicine completely. A third of them can reduce the medicine, the thyroid medicine, and a third have no change in the thyroid hormone needs at all. And he's found that consistently over the years.
So those getting off the thyroid medicine, and then those that he doesn't start on thyroid medicine, he's also using the companion supplements to help the body utilize the iodine better?
I don't think he uses the B2 and B3 like we do as much, but we found that there's some people that have sometimes congenital problems absorbing the iodine. And Dr. Fleshes and Dr. Abraham, the other two iodine doctors, have found that if you're symporters, that's the absorbing tissue for iodine, if those aren't functioning, if they are atrophied, then they're not functioning because the body hasn't had enough iodine in its diet. So there's been no use for them to even have absorbing tissues.
Yeah.
The B2 B3 will bring this iodine symporters back on board so it can absorb the iodine. So that's what there's two ways of doing it. You can start with it with the B2 and B3, or you can add it in 6 months. Now, I like to have people start on it and not need it, and not wait the 6 months to get an effect. It's like, you understand what I'm saying about, I'd rather start somebody and have results fast and have them like say, oh, let's try this for six months without taking it. And if nothing happens, you've wasted 6 months of your life. At least if you've tried the B2 and B3, you've given it the best try you can.
Yeah, and you recommend selenium and magnesium as well, which most people, if they have thyroid issues, they should be taking those in anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of my last questions, I swear, who should not take iodine though? Because there's always the anomalies that don't do well.
Yes, there's one classification and only one that we've been aware of for years. And that's if you have a hot nodule. That's a thyroid nodule it's called an autonomous nodule that can make its own thyroid. It's a nodule, but it makes its own thyroid hormone. So essentially, you're growing another thyroid when you have this thing. And what people generally do, you can be iodine deficient and have this. They get it surgically removed. It's a fairly simple operation. And then you're able to take iodine, but do not take it, if you have an autonomous nodule or a hot nodule.
And this is not, just so people are aware, this is not like the normal thyroid nodules
that
we would see. Your doctor should be able to see this type and should let you know immediately if you do.
Yeah, most people are aware of it. Their doctors have told them somewhere along the line. Also, it's very rare.
Yeah, because I know last night, like I mentioned, I did a thyroid class and some people had commented that they had thyroid nodules. So I know they're going to listen to this and be like, oh, well, now I can't take thyroid, but you don't have this hot nodule. You have the kind of generic nodules.
Yes, the generic nodules are so common that they're really considered among endocrinologists a variation of normal. That's how deficient we are in iodine.
Yeah. Well, we have covered quite a lot in such a short amount of time, which is amazing. So is there anything else you would like to add on, Lynn, that you think people should know about iodine that maybe I didn't ask?
You ask wonderful questions. This has been one of the best interviews I've ever had because you're right on top of all this stuff. I don't have to. That makes me wonder: did we leave out anything that was the really extreme layman questions? I don't know. We'll find out.
I tried to ask in a way that I understand, but there was one thing I did leave out when you were talking about pregnancy and using iodine in pregnancy. Somehow in conversation, this came up with my clients the other day, and we were speaking about Guinness, and someone said they tried Guinness and it tasted crap, basically. And someone else said, well, I heard when women are pregnant in Ireland, they're given Guinness during pregnancy. Why is that? Because of course I'm Irish. And I was like, well, yeah, we don't do it now. Firstly, we don't. It was like back in the early centuries, women were recommended to drink Guinness during pregnancy because it would help with growth. We have a saying that Guinness helps put hair on your chest, so it helps you grow. But it was known that Guinness was high in iron and copper and calcium and folate and even some iodine, and that would help with the pregnancy and help the baby grow as well. So when you were saying that about the iodine during pregnancy, that antidote came back to me the other day. We, like the ancient times, there is a lot of hidden gems there when we really look at what our ancestors said and did.
Yes, a lot of this is passed along, and the reason I devoted some space in my book to where iodine came from and how long it's been used, and that it's not a hot new thing. It's not controversial. It's an ancient treatment for, in many cultures and in the Western cultures, certainly. So it's not, it's the oldest traditional medicine.
Yeah. So I really encourage people to get your book. You can get it on Amazon here in Canada. You can also get it on Audible. Where else can people find out more about iodine and even what you're doing right now, Lynn?
Well, the main place I would, if you're going to anticipate taking iodine, I would go on Facebook and check out the iodine workshop group. I mean, that's where you can jump in and ask your questions, or you might ask, like, did this happen to you? Did this happen to you? That kind of thing. So people exchange information that you couldn't write 100 books that cover as much as these groups eventually do.
Yeah.
But the book is available all over, on pretty much every platform you could want to. Amazon is the easiest for most people.
Yeah, I really like your iodineresearch.com website because it doesn't have all the fluff of other websites. It's very basic and straight to the point. So you just click on what am I looking for, and it just gives you the answers. I don't like all the fuzziness of other websites. So yours is very much like an online library in that aspect. You just click on iodine and pregnancy. Actually, I was looking at iodine for Sjogren's a while ago for one of my clients, and it was right there. And I was like, thank you. I don't need to go searching for stuff. I just want it right there. And that website does that. So it's great.
I'm glad. Thank you for saying
and
that.
Then we also have your breast cancer choices. And then you have lynnfarrow.net as well. So you're kind of everywhere.
I try to be, but I'm selective.
Yeah. Well, as long as you're not everywhere in your slippers and with a hanger, then we'll be okay.
I should have an illustration of that.
You should. I wonder if we could, or you or I, maybe one of my clients is a cartoonist or something, and you could get something drawn up.
Yes, that would be fun.
Well, thank you for your time, Lynn. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I really feel honored that I am one of the people you said yes to for talking to. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this.
Well, thank you for having me.
And if you get a chance, I might remind you, maybe send me, you said there was a video about the iodine being used in these countries to help with growth. You might forward that on to me.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure. We definitely covered a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you.